Welcome to Matters Financial, Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. I'm always grateful. It's been a busy day today, running around outside the office. Just to remind you, I went to see Samaya Hassan Athmani, who's the CEO of the National Oil Corporation of Kenya. I took this photograph of her, and she was a very engaging individual. We were talking about the oil and gas markets. Lots of interesting points are going to come out of this Mindspeak, and particularly around the oil and gas sector. So do try and make it at the Intercontinental on Saturday, serving breakfast from about 9, starting at about 10. What is Mindspeak? We did a little YouTube clip. Have a look at that if you're interested. The IMF is saying that the Saudis risk draining financial assets in 5 years if they continue at this kind of pace. Home thoughts, going back to the photograph I took of the cheetah and the dead eland, and I called it nature's red in tooth and claw, and it really was an extraordinary situation. Very big cheetah. Have a look at the photograph. Stop acting so small. You are the universe in ecstatic motion. Rumi. Scott Kelly, the atmosphere, sometimes she glows. Good morning from the space station. He's been posting some wonderful photographs as he's gone around that space station. Dance when you're broken open, dance if you've torn the bandage off, dance in the middle of the fighting, dance in your blood, dance when you're perfectly free. Rumi. Mira Hillel, Chinese president, to tough BBC question from Laura Kay on human rights. Thank you. Your question is very important to us. Goodbye. Huffington Post is talking of an alleged hospitalization of King Salman, who is thought to have Alzheimer's disease. While the 79-year-old monarch's hospital stay surprised many in the West, the question global affairs and security analysts ask is, what might the future look like for Saudi Arabia now that the controversial king is sidelined? Will the rest of the royal family accept and allow Crown Prince Mohammed bin Nayef to lead? Or will the kingdom's royal family see division within the ranks? These events could coalesce into a major political storm, significantly increasing the risk of instability, not only within the kingdom, but across the greater strife-torn Middle East, if that's even possible. This turn of events comes on the heels of shocking news. London's Guardian credits claims by an anonymous Saudi prince who states that 2 letters have circulated among senior members of the royal family, encouraging them to stage a coup against King Salman. The rationale is the king and his powerful 30-year-old son, Deputy Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, have pursued dangerous policies that are leading the kingdom to political, economic and military ruin. Disclosure of these memos raises serious concerns. I find myself recalling the assassination of King Faisal in 1975. Should royal infighting reveal itself to the outside world, it'll mark the start of the end for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia as we know it. A while ago I said I thought the kingdom has lost its way, and is a little like Gulliver, becoming more and more ensnared and enmeshed in the Lilliputian's net. I came across a very good documentary from Journeyman Pictures inside Saudi Arabia's growing opposition movement that's been hidden from the world. Worth looking at as well. Putin forces Obama to capitulate on Syria. On Monday, US Secretary of State John Kerry called for an emergency summit later in the week so that leaders from Russia, Turkey, Saudi Arabia and Jordan could discuss ways to avoid the total destruction of Syria. According to Kerry, everybody, including the Russians and the Iranians, have said there is no military solution, so we need to make an effort to find a political solution. This is a human catastrophe. Now threatens the integrity of a whole group of countries around the region. Of course, it was never a catastrophe when the terrorists were destroying cities and villages across the country, uprooting half the population, and transforming the once unified and secure nation into an anarchic, failed state. It only became a catastrophe when Putin synchronized the Russian bombing campaign with Allied forces on the ground, who started wiping out hundreds of US-backed militants and recapturing critical cities across Western Corridor. Now that the Russian Air Force is pounding the living daylights out of jihadi ammo dumps, weapons depots, and rebel strongholds, and the Syrian Arab armies tightening their grip on Aleppo, and Hezbollah is inflicting heavy casualties on Jabhat al-Nusra militants and other al-Qaeda-linked militants, Kerry's decided it's a catastrophe. Now that the momentum of the war has shifted in favor of Syrian President Assad, Kerry wants a timeout, and that's why I called it a breathtaking intervention by Putin. Putin's intervention stopped the emergence of a terrorist caliphate in Damascus. He turned the tide in the 4-year-long war and delivered a body blow to Washington's strategy. Now he's going to finish the job. Putin is not gullible enough to fall for Kerry's stalling tactic. He's going to kill or capture as many of the terrorists as possible, and he's not going to let Uncle Sam get in the way. Talking about how of the terrorists, over 2,000 are from Chechnya, and saying, it is an existential threat to Russia. This right-hand counterpunch, I'm not buying it. What Kerry cares about is his hoodlum head-chopper buddies that are being turned into shredded wheat by Russian daisy cutters. That's what he cares about, and I think he's right. And I spoke about this on the 5th of October when I called Putin a geopolitical grandmaster. I said you could hear the squealing start immediately from Ankara to Riyadh, from the GCC to Washington. All these capitals have assets on the ground in Syria, and what is clear is that Russia is not making a distinction between IS or the moderate opposition fighting Assad, which really means our terrorists. As Putin fancies himself the flycatcher and Syria the fly trap, the speed of execution confirms that Russia is once again a geopolitical player that will have to be considered. It is a breathtaking rebound, and I said President Obama is now probably considering how he can wrestle the oil price to $20 a barrel. Put up a photograph that Amichai Stein tweeted, Assad meeting with Putin, first trip abroad since war began in 2011. Putin is saying at least 4,000 people from ex-Soviet republics are fighting against the government in Syria. US officials expressed outrage at the visit, saying Russia was emboldening Assad by allowing him to visit. Al Jazeera tweeted, Russian drone footage shows devastated Damascus suburb. So all in all, I think Putin is currently the price maker, the price setter in this situation. Amnesty International, 1 year in jail for Zainab al-Khawaja, Bahraini activist who ripped up the photo of the king. Let's move on to the markets. Euro 113.04 earlier, but now at 113.14. Dollar index 95.13. Japanese yen 119.76. Swissy 0.96. Pound 154.71. Aussie and the Antipodean currencies have been on the back foot, but the Aussies are up at 0.7221. India rupee 65.114, South Korean won 11.3814, Rial 394.36, so that's moving back out again. Egyptian pound 802.90, above 8. South African rand 13.5829. Big move in the rand, and obviously the news flow wasn't helpful. I'll put up a 3-month chart of the dollar index. I still think that we're going to see it continue to soften, and it's tilted to the downside, notwithstanding the move we've seen in the euro, which is all about a possible extension of quantitative easing. Commodity markets may not see a sustained rally until the 2020s. There's no quick fix on the horizon for the world's beleaguered commodity markets, if more than a century of price cycles is any guide. Producers endure the longest slump in decades. Miners, farmers, drillers, who supplied almost $8 trillion of raw materials at their peak in 2011, may not see values bottom for as long as 24 months. This is David Jackson, Professor of Economics at Canada's Simon Fraser University. We're about 75 to 80% of the way there in terms of the coming down from the absolute crest in prices, said Jacks. The trough is not going to be an abbreviated event, it will be years beyond that. Flatlining. Rout has deepened as the economy of China, top consumer of grains, energy and metals, expands at the slowest pace in 2 decades. At the same time, supply in some markets is still expanding after record prices encourage producers to raise output. Raw materials may be in the 4th year of a 20-year bear supercycle. The Bloomberg Commodity Index is down about 15% in 2015 after touching a 16-year low in August. The gauge is heading for the 5th straight annual loss, the longest slide on records since records started in 1991. Between 1865 and 2010, the world experienced 4 so-called commodity supercycles. Before the current cycle, the previous peak was in 1973, followed by a 26-year decline, including oil. Since the turn of the 20th century, downswings in prices have typically been about 50% longer than upswings. The current cycle has been unusual because of the rapid speed of China's urbanization. Before then, industrial booms in Britain and US each spanned about 50 to 100 years. The scale of the Chinese transformation that we've lived through, that is historically unprecedented, Jack said. They moved over 300 million people into cities in the past 20 years. That's something that we've never seen in human history. On the 3rd of November last year, I said the commodity supercycle is dead in the water. Gold, last trading at 1166, I think it's tilted to the upside. 1155 key support. Crude oil on the bounce here, but at 45.61, I think it's still tilted to the downside. Chinese investment in Africa plunges 84%. This is according to the Financial Times. Cross-border investment in greenfield projects and in expansion of existing projects in Africa fell by 84% in the first half of this year compared with a year earlier. Africa attracted record inward FDI flows in the full year of 2014, totaling $87 billion, 64% increase from 2013. FDI has dipped across the board from emerging markets into other emerging markets, into Africa in particular, said the IFC. On the 31st of August this year, I wrote a piece, China's volatility causing influenza across Africa, and I was referring to this very slowdown. Protesters have marched in Congo Republic for the 2nd day. Security forces fired warning shots, tear gas to disperse hundreds of protesters. President Denis Sassou Nguesso's critics accuse him of using a referendum on Sunday on whether to lift a limit on the number of terms a president can serve to extend his rule ahead of an election next year. All the opposition leaders are under house arrest to stop them holding rallies. South African riot police fired tear gas and stun grenades on Wednesday at hundreds of protesting students who stormed the Parliament precinct in Cape Town trying to disrupt the reading of Finance Minister Nene's interim budget. Zoe S. from, I assume, South Africa tweeted these words by Madiba about the ANC and accountability to the South African people are very important. South African all-share up 6.48% year to date. Dollar Rand put up a 6-month chart. Looks as if it's going back to the lower end of the range, above 14. Egyptian pound above 8, as I said previously. Egyptian stock market down 14.09%. Year to date, Nigerian all share down 12.86% year to date. Ghana Stock Exchange down 12% year to date. Mozambique may convert Tuna bond into sovereign debt. $850 million bond issued 2 years ago by the state tuna fishing company, Amato. They want to convert that into sovereign debt to improve terms, as the finance minister The bond was presented in 2013 as funding for tuna fishing and related infrastructure, although it quickly became apparent much of the cash was for maritime surveillance and security. Under pressure from Western donors, the government acknowledged the discrepancies in June when it assigned $500 million of the debt to its defense budget, leaving $350 million on the books of Emato. We need to clarify things. Currently, the market is treating this like a sovereign debt, but part of it is corporate debt. We will continue to guarantee the debt, but it would be simpler if it was one loan. Bond has an amortizing structure, giving it a weighted average life of 4.5 years. Kenyan Wall Street tweeted Central Bank of Kenya yield rate and coupon rates now at 22.954%. And this is what's strengthening the shilling below 102. Joyce Ann Wainana, who's the head of Citigroup in East Africa, said during an interview in Dubai on Tuesday, it's an isolated incident. I don't think this is an industry-wide issue. The central bank held a press conference yesterday, said that they're going to decide on Imperial Bank after fraud investigations are completed in 1 week. Credible evidence reveals some Imperial Bank loans were granted without due procedure. This is the central bank governor. There was some capital movement in the small and medium banks in the first days. This has, however, now settled down. Not convinced of that. There continues to be a lot of flight money out of the small banks. The interbank rate has come down dramatically from last week's 28 to about 13.5% on Monday. US has become the second biggest buyer of Kenyan products. American consumers bought $26.9 billion worth of Kenyan goods in the period to September, ahead of Netherlands' $25.3 billion, which is interesting. Kenya shilling below 102 at 101.89. Nairobi all share is up 2.39% since the 14th of October when it closed the 2015 low, remains down 14.69%. Insurance giant Allianz is to open a Nairobi office. Let me leave you with a photograph from E10, Olympics Corner, one of the many running-related gift shops of the town. This is where all the Kenyan runners train. A lot of them come from, so I hope you enjoy that. Now, see you on Saturday. Got Samir in the house, very much looking forward to that. A bit of gender balance, very engaging individual. I hope to see you there at the Intercontinental.